Hi everyone, good evening and I welcome everyone in our today's class wherein we'll go with the third chapter of economic survey that will talk about your trade situation. So we are done with the two of the chapters of economic survey. So now we are heading towards the third one. So you can see here that the third or I would say the name of the third chapter is India's external sector, which talks about the resilience amid of the global uncertainties. So you can see here how it is talking about being resilient even if there are a lot of geopolitical tensions going on, even when there is a lot of global uncertainty is going on. So we'll entirely focus on our external sector. Now we all know that India is I would say that India is an open economy. We are continuously involved in the exchange of goods and services with the rest of the nations, with the rest of the countries, and for that it includes a lot of subtopics here. Even if I talk about the foreign exchange, our currency swaps, even if I talk about the foreign currencies that are also a part of your external trade only, even when if I talk about your BOP, and rest of the things, they all are the part of your external sector only, because since we are involved in the exchange of goods and services with the other nations, we are involved with a lot of things, even just from currency to the rest of the businesses as well. So firstly, you can see the heading here that this particular survey is saying that if I talk about this external sector, or India's external sector, then it is proving to be as resilient, even when there are a lot of distractions, or I would say that even when there are a lot of global uncertainties going on, our global I would say our external sector is still resilient in nature. Now the focus should be on the total exports. Now what is the number here? Now before going on to the numbers here, one thing that I specifically want to clarify here, that this particular chapter, just like our rest of the chapters, include a lot of numbers. So basically whatever the terminologies are there, which are very important to clarify, or I would say which are very, very important for you people to know, I'll explain them. Rest I'll read, I'll just discuss with you about the numbers. So just bear with me. We'll continuously see the numbers, we'll continuously see the comparison between the different states, among the different states. So the comparison would be made just basic based on the numbers only. Rest, if there is any of the terminologies that is very complicated in manner, and if it is important for you people to know, I'll simultaneously explain it, and rest will continuously or entirely focus upon the numbers here. Now if I talk about the total exports, you can see the survey saying that in the first 9 months of financial year 2025, it reached to 6026 billion US dollars. Similarly, if I talk about today, so if it is lying at what, it is lying at 682.2 billion dollars. So now the survey is saying that there is a growth here by 6%. Similarly, if I talk about imports also, so the survey is saying that there is increase in the in the imports also. But since, or I would say the reason behind it is that there is a complete, or I would say continuous increase in the domestic demand. That is the reason we can see that there is a growth in the imports as well. Okay. Next, if I talk about the key trade trends here, so you can see if I talk about exports, they have grown by 10.4%, specifically talking about these many exports, which include your non-oil, which include your non-gems and your jewelry. Okay. Now these are the exports that have been grown by 10.4%. Okay. Now this shows the strong performance in the diversified sector. Similarly, if I talk about the global trade shift towards protectionism, now if I talk about the protectionism, this is particularly a policy which protects your trade, or I would say which protects your domestic industries. When we are importing goods and services from rest of the nations, from rest of the countries, from rest of the industries, that would violate the interest of our domestic producers, of course. And that will give a sense of somewhere, give somewhere a sense of fear among the industrialists that are there in our domestic economy. So protectionism ensures, or I would say protectionism ensures, India's protectionism ensures that we have some kind of barriers that will not lead to violate the the interest of our domestic producers. So it will necessitate the strategic reforms to boost our India's export competitiveness, one thing. Next, focus is completely on reducing the trade related cost and enhance the export facilitation is crucial for global supply chain integration. Take it. Now the survey is saying that we are continuously focused towards the more of exports rather than completely relying upon your imports. Next, if I talk about the capital flows and your foreign exchange reserves, so capital flows as in that whatever the amount of capital is there that is transferred from one nation to another, or I would say what is coming in India from the rest of the economies. Next, if I talk about foreign exchange reserves, so of course whatever goods and services are being exchanged, you need to exchange in at a, I would say at a currency, or I would say at a decided point जहाँ पे जो settlement है वो proper हो जाए. So if you talk about the currency, then the famous currency is your US dollars, of course. So foreign exchange reserves ensure that you have reserves of foreign currencies as well. That is, if I simplify the things here, so this is about your foreign currency. Similarly, if you talk about the foreign portfolio investment, you have FDI, you have FPI. Similarly, if I talk about FDI, that is your direct investment, and that gives you a sense of long-term investment. Similarly, if I talk about FPI, that consists of a short-term investment. So here is a basic differentiation between both of them. Now it showed a mixed trend with the capital outflow during the global uncertainty, but remained positive overall due to the India's strong macro economic fundamentals. Similarly, if we talk about FDI, so the inflows have been revived in financial year 25, though net jo FDI hai, it has been declined due to increase in the repatriation. Now if I talk about the forex reserves, so it stood at US dollars 640.3 billion. Okay, that was the time period of December 2024, covering your 90% of external debt, indicating a strong financial stability that is there. Okay, now similarly you can see the data here. It is showing you about the global economic policy uncertainty index, that is blue, and similarly you can see the trade policy uncertainty index here. So we can see the number where it is lying. Okay. Next, we'll talk about the global economic and trade environment. Okay, now we'll talk about the global economic and trade environment. So basically you can see that there are a lot of geopolitical conflicts going on. There are a lot of geo-economic fragmentation that is going on. Climate events have increased uncertainty. Okay. If I talk about the IMF, it has suggested a rise in the uncertainty that will reduce the output growth by 0.4 से लेके 1.3 percentage points तक. Since it is saying here with the change in the climatic conditions and with the change in the environment, we will see a lot of changes in our output as well. So this is the projection that has been given by our IMF. Now if I talk about India's policy uncertainty index, which is developed by RBI, so it tracks the economics uncertainty in real time using your Google Trends data. Okay. Now if I talk about the global trade performance in 2024, so you can see here that there is a continuous positive trend. If I talk about H2 of 2023, key trade growth trends में क्या क्या है? First is your merchandise trade. If I talk about the merchandise trade, if it is that trade which consists of goods only, so you are exchanging goods and services from one place to another, but that consists of just goods only and not services in a manner, that is known as your merchandise trade. Now if I talk about the exports, it has been increased by 3.5%. Similarly, if I talk about imports, increase is by 3.0%. Services trade, as in that it includes just goods, rest of the things are included in services trade. So you can see there is a growth in both of the aspects here by 7.9% and 6.7% here. Okay. Now if I talk about the developing as well as developed economies, developing economies as in who are continuously engaged in the development of the countries, or I would say development of the economies. Similarly, if I talk about the developed economies, they are those economies who are very well in infrastructure and they have already adopted the many of the technologies there. Now if I talk about the developing economies, they led trade growth by early 2024. Quarter 3 2024 saw a reversal here with the developed economies reviving their trade growth. East Asia's trade growth stalled. A major Asian developing economies saw a negative growth. Now here a lot of aspects are there. One can be your after effects of your COVID-19, that was a pandemic reason. Another major thing is that there is a lot of geopolitical tension going on. ठीक है. Similarly, you have I would say world economy is not that settled. Inflation problem is there, global inflation problem is there. I would say the prices of the goods and services are just increasing rapidly. Similarly, the monetary policy, or I would say the the tightening policy is also going on. That is too impacting our economy. So these are the reasons that are there behind it. Similarly, if I talk about the projected trade outlook for 2024, so you can see here total trade expected to reach a record of 33 trillion US dollars. Similarly, if I talk about the services trade to grow by 7% year on year, goods trade to grow by 2% but still below the 2022 peak. Similarly, if I talk about the overall, global trade, it can be, it needs to be expanded by USD, your US dollar 1 trillion, that is causing increase by 3.3%, with the goods and services each contributing US dollars 500 billion %. Take 500 billion US dollars. So now you can see the chart here. Merchandise export volume growth has been shown and merchandise import volume growth has been shown. Okay, if I talk about the import here, you can see it is lying here at 3%, and if I talk about the merchandise export growth volume, so it has been increased by 3.5%. Of course, the situation is more better. The situation is more better when we, completely focuses on exports rather than, focusing more on imports. So if if exports are, increasing, that is a good situation for our economy. Similarly, if you talk about the global tariff trend, tariff as in that you are putting restrictions, or you are putting a kind of, it is a kind of, agreement that is between the two nations, and whenever there is an import going on, you're putting tariffs there just to protect the interest of your domestic industries, or just to maintain the stability of your economy, so that the prices of the goods and services do not rise, and you highly focuses on the things that are made in your country only. So global tariff trends ki agar main baat karu, so you can see the number of regional tariff trade agreements rose from 22 in 1990 to 369 in 2024, reducing the global trade barriers. Similarly, if I talk about the India's average tariff rate on dutiable items, that fell from 48.9% that was in 2000 to 17.3% that was in 2024. In China, it declined from 16.4% to 8.3%. That is the case here. Similarly, if I talk about the time period between 2012 se leke 2022 tak, so the global most favored nations and the preferential tariffs dropped down. Agriculture ki agar baat karo, so it has been dropped down to by 3%, and that is most favored nations. If I talk about the preferential, that is by 1.4%. Similarly, if I talk about the manufacturing sector, that is preferential. Similarly, if I talk about the preferential, by 1% it has been decreased. Now if I talk about the India's tariff policy approach, so it is balanced. It has balanced your domestic industrial protection and the global economic integration, while ensuring that ensuring to the World Trade Organization compliances, because you have to follow the the rules and regulations and the compliances that have been given by your WTO. So you also have to ensure that. It focuses on the rationalization of tariffs. Okay, it completely focuses on the rationalization of tariffs, that highly focuses on the enhancement of the trade competitiveness among various countries. Similarly, if you talk about the tariffs and industrial policy, you can see the tariffs can support fledgling industries. Fledgling industries are those industries which are emerging industries, as in कि जो थोड़े टाइम पीरियड में भी बहुत ज़्यादा ग्रोथ कर रही हैं, those are your fledgling industries. That means कि they are continuously growing. ठीक है, those industries are known as your fledgling industries, but they require a calibrated approach to balance the sector growth with overall economic costs. Historically, the industrialized nations used high tariffs alongside your internal free market, stable banking system, infrastructure investment, and your universal education is also there. Okay. Now what we have learned from the global industrial policies, so we have taken an example of two of the nations here. Similarly, we now will talk about the Korea's industrial policy. So you can see here they use tariffs, they use subsidies, they used export performance benchmarks to build its heavy chemical industry. So that is what we have learned from this particular industry. Similarly, if I talk about the Northeast Asia's success, you can see here it came from carrot and stick approach. The privileges were granted, but tied to strict performance accountability that was there. So if I talk about the key takeaways, so you can see that tariffs were instrumental in the industrial growth. They were a part of your broader economic strategy. Similarly, if I talk about the effective industrial policy, they combines the protection with the performance-based accountability to drive your productivity, efficiency, and your global competitiveness. Okay. Now we'll see that what are the non-tariff measures and your global trade. Now we'll see what how it has performed, even if it has risen or even if it has been decreased. So now we'll talk about the time period between 2021 से लेके 2024 तक. So you can see that overall there is a rise in the non-tariff measures. ठीक है, non-tariff measures as in that we are talking, sorry, that we are here talking about the rise in the non-tariff measures, that the measures have been taken which are consisting of your non-tariff measures. Now you can see here that over 26,000 of new trade investment restrictions have been imposed globally. Technical barriers to trade are going to impact, I have impacted your 31.6% of product lines, covering 67.1% of global trade. Similarly, if I talk about the export related measures, they have affected 19.3% of product lines, covering your 31.2% of the global trade. Sectors that are most effective are your agriculture, manufacturing, and your natural resources. Okay. Now if I talk about the industrial policy, you can see here that there is an increasingly used for targeted economic goals, your subsidies and your export restrictions. ठीक है, unlike tariffs, जो हमारे non-tariff measures हैं, they are granular, they are less transparent, and they are making them harder to evaluate. This is the problem that is related to your non-tariff measures. Now we have talked about in general, we have talked about industries. Now we'll see the the non-tariff measures that are there related to our climate. ठीक है, now you can see that climate related non-tariff measures have covered 26.4% of the global trade that is there, valued US dollars 6.5 trillion. Your non-tariff trades measures have make up of 61% of climate. One second. Alright, so we were saying that it has make up of 61% of climate related your non-tariff measures, followed by export related and price control measures. Key policies that are impacting your global trade: first is your carbon border adjustment mechanism, next is your European Union deforestation regulations, and these measures will impact the exports from emerging economies like your China, India and Turkey. Okay. Similarly, you can see that NTMs have increased as tariff barriers have been declined, impacting the global trade significantly. Now climate related NTMs are growing, affecting high carbon dioxide your emission industries. Similarly, if we talk about the EU policies that will reshape the trade patterns, especially for your export heavy nations. Okay. Now we'll talk about the carbon border adjustment mechanism and European Union deforestation regulation. Okay. So that is the case here. So you can see here that it has been, wait, one second. Alright, so we were discussing about the carbon border adjustment mechanism and your European Union deforestation regulation. If I talk about the carbon border adjustment mechanism, so it focuses on the carbon emission, or I would say just balancing out the economy. Similarly, you have European Union deforestation regulations here. Okay. So these are what is related by your European Union. In if I talk about the CBAM, that ensures that whatever the carbon emission that is there in our economy, if I specifically talk about EU, then it ensures that whatever the products are imported from rest of the nations, that too should have a particular, I would say, same carbon pricing that is there whatever the product has been produced in their nation only. Now this will ensure what? This will ensure that there is no excess of carbon emission in their country, and whatever the products and services that are they are importing from rest of the nations, they too should have same carbon pricing. Now this will ensure that the industries are more eco-friendly, the industries are more, you know, towards the sustainable development. They are less focused on the, you know, increase in the carbon emission, and this will lead to decrease in it. Now you can see what are the sectors covered. So iron and steel, aluminium, cement and fertilizer. Similarly, if I talk about UK CBAM, so you can see it includes additional, you know, sectors like glass, your ceramics and your hydrogen. What is the difference between? So that, you know, the EU CBM covers only direct emissions. Similarly, if I talk about the UK one, it will include both direct and indirect emissions. Okay. Now, what is its impact on India? So, if I talk about India CBAM, if I talk about India's CBAM, so you can see that, you know, it has affected exports to the EU rose from 6.3% to 10.5%. Majorly it impacted the exports only. Iron and steel ko impact kara hai, aluminium ko impact kara hai, cement ko impact kara hai, and it has impacted fertilizers as well. Now India has a high CBAM exposure index, 0.03% as per, you know, World Bank, making compliance costly. Now you can see, you know, there was a news also that was related to CBAM, that, you know, European Union is not you know, ready to, you know, accept this thing, or, you know, this is one of the obstacles here. So India is continuously saying that, you know, this is one of the obstacles here, and we are facing a lot of, you know, complications in the, you know, exchange of goods and services. So, you know, the EU is continuously saying that we are not going to reduce it just for you, because it is very, you know, important for us also to maintain the carbon emission, and, you know, whatever the resources, whatever the goods and services we are importing from rest of the nations, we also have to ensure that they too should have a perfect carbon pricing, whatever, you know, the products that has that, you know, we are, you know, producing in our country. So now if I talk about EUDR, so it was, you know, the implementation year, the implementation will end of, the implementation is end of 2025. The objective is to prevent EU market access for, you know, the products and linked to deforestation. Now, what is the requirements for traders? The the products must be deforestation free, compliance with the, you know, producer, you know, your country's law, due diligence in supply chain tracking should be there, and similarly risk based approach should be there. That will include your countries categorized as low, standard or high risk based on the deforestation laws. Now, if you see the products that are included here, so you can see that soy, beef, palm oil, wood, cocoa, coffee, butter, you know, sorry, your rubber and, you know, derived products, that includes your leather, chocolate, furniture, that are included in it. Okay. Now, the one which is related to deforestation that we are getting from, you know, our trees. So you can see here the impact on India. It affected the exports. Next, it highly impacted the, you know, your the products. The highly impacted the products that are related to coffee, leather, oil cake, your paper and wood furniture. Okay. Next, if I talk about CBAM and, you know, if I talk about your EUDR, so they have you know, impact, they have put impact in our India's exports. What this has been told by a survey. So these measures, while framed as a capital policies, now function as a trade barriers favoring your local production in developed economies. Similarly, India must adapt to restrict, you know, or restrict your environmental compliances while balancing your economic growth. Now we'll talk about the India's trade performance. Okay. Now we'll talk about the India's trade performance. We'll see that what is the trade deficit, what is the exports, what is the number that is related to exports, and what is the number that is related to imports also. So first, if you see the overall growth of trade here, so we can see, you know, we'll see the time period between your April se leke December tak, that is your financial year. So if I talk about the exports, you can see that, you know, it has been rising. Now exports include your both merchandise and your, you know, services as well. That means it is including both your trade, you know, your goods as well as your services. Take it. Now it has, you know, reached out to $602.6 billion. It has added on 6% year in year. Similarly, if I talk about the total imports, there is a rise of 6.9% year on year, and that has, you know, made $682.2 billion here. Similarly, if I talk about trade deficit as in you are importing more and you are you know, exporting less, that makes your export, you know, that makes your trade deficit. So the situation here is that you can see it has been increased from $69.7 billion to $79.5 billion due to the higher import growth. Since our economy is demanding a lot, there is an increase in the domestic production, or I would say there is an increase in the domestic demand of imports or goods and services from the rest of the nation. That is the reason we are watching a continuous increase in our imports as well. Now we'll see the export, your merchandise export performance. So your total merchandise exports have been increased by 1.6% year on year. ठीक है, non petroleum exports की अगर बात करो, so that they have been increased by 7.1% year on year. Non petroleum and non gem and non jewelry has an increase by plus 9.1% here. If I talk about the growing economies or growing sectors here, so you can see drugs and pharmaceuticals, there is a growth here also. Electronic goods, there is a growth here also. Your engineering goods, there is a growth here also, which consists of your chemicals and your textiles also. Okay. Now if I talk about the rest of the things, so total merchandise imports have been increased by 5.2% year on year. Okay. Similarly, if I talk about non-oil and non-gold imports, you can see here $352.1 billion, there is an increase. Similarly, if I talk about the key import trends, so you can see here that there is a higher gold imports due to the festival demand, that is also there. ये तो हमेशा का reason है कि gold जो है वो ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा import हम करते हैं. Now if you see the increased imports of capital goods, that consist of your non-ferrous metals, machinery, your machine tools, electrical and transport equipments, and again there is a rise in the electronic goods imports, that is reflecting your higher consumer spending, and it includes your pulses and cotton imports, that is to increase the stabilization in the domestic prices. Similarly, if you talk about the trade deficit, okay, if you talk about the trade deficit here, so you can see now trade deficit as in you are increasing your imports and your exports are less. So merchandise trade deficit is there, which is $210.8 billion. Now if I talk about the deficit, it has been widened due to faster import growth. Okay. Now trade, India's trade remains resilient with a strong service exports, selective merchandise export growth, but trade deficit widened due to rising import demand. That is the case here. Now you can see the chart here. This has shown trends in merchandise trade. First, you can see the merchandise imports, that is yellow in color. Similarly, you can see merchandise imports, merchandise as in this is including your goods only. You can see it has been increased in every, in every data you can see the imports are more than your exports. So in purple, you can see the trade deficit. Now, specifically, if you talk about the April period, the year 2024, so it has been increased by 211%. So if I compare it with the rest of the economies, so सबसे ज़्यादा कहाँ था हमारा financial year 2023 में, because this was a pandemic period as well. मतलब this was not the pandemic period, but the after effects were seen in this particular year. So you can see the data here. ठीक है. Similarly, if I talk about the rest of the deficit, so we have already included it. Now we will talk about the India's textile export performance. So you can see we are ranking 6th largest exporter of textiles and apparel. Similarly, if I talk about the economic contribution, so GDP में it is contributing 2.3%, industrial production is contributing 13%. Similarly, if I talk about the total exports, they are contributing 12%, and if I talk about the employment, so it is employing over 45 million people, predominantly in MSME, that is 80% of the capacity. That is the entire case here. Now we'll see about the export performance. Sorry. So you can see here that total textile exports are $34 billion. If I talk about the breakdown, if I talk about the apparel, separately, and if I talk about the raw materials and separate things, so you can see apparel, is standing at 42%. Similarly, if I talk about the raw material and semi-finished goods, $11.7 billion, that is 34%. Finished and non-apparel goods की अगर बात करूँ, so it is 30%, $7.8 billion. Similarly, if we talk about the key export makers, so Europe and US जो है, they have 66% of apparel exports, 58% of finished non-apparel goods, and 12% of raw material. Similarly, if I talk about UK, so you can see 8% of apparel exports are there. UAE consists of 7% of apparel exports here. Okay, now you'll see about the global market share in apparel. So it is 2.8%. Specifically, if I talk about China, that is 30%. Bangladesh consists of 9%. Vietnam consists of 7% here. Now, if I talk about the export composition, so you can see cotton dominated. It is there. 8 out of 10 top 10 textile exports are cotton based. Similarly, if I talk about the rest of the things, in India, competes strongly for $3 billion worth of apparel exports, but it lags in the other categories as well. Now, we'll see about the challenges in future. So, textile industry showed a resilience during your COVID-19 as well. Okay. Now, India is aiming to reach to $150 billion in textile exports by 2030. This is the target here. Okay, this is the target here. Now it will lead to increase in the employment opportunities as well. We've already seen this. Okay, this is a trend in the merchandise trade. Now we'll see about the India's textile exports. So the one in yellow is your apparel one. The one in purple is your semi-finished, and the one in green shows your textile, finished textile here. So specifically, if I talk about 2023, so you can see that your apparel one are lying at 14.6%, and your raw material is lying at 12.6%, and if I talk about finished goods, so it is lying near to above 6 your percent. Now, if I talk about the challenges and opportunities in textile industry, so you can see that textile industry is fragmented across your SMEs, leading to higher logistics cost that has a competition like China and Vietnam. Complex regulatory procedures hai, they lack in free trade agreements. Similarly, if I talk about Indian textiles face higher tariffs in a major markets, unlike your competitors that are benefiting from your free trade agreement. So this is the case here. Okay. Now we'll see the global shift to sustainability. That is that you are producing, but you have to take care of your environment as well. You are producing, but you have to take care of your environment as well. Now we'll see about the government initiatives and your industry growth strategies. Now PLIs की अगर मैं बात करूँ, so you can see the number that is related to PLIs, ठीक है, production linked incentive that are directly given here. Now we'll talk about the National Technical Textile Mission that consists of this much numbers you can see on your screen. Similarly, we have PM Mitra Parks, ठीक है, 7 integrated textile parks are there, which are to promote your vertical integration, and it will attract your FDI as well. Now we'll talk about the trade agreements and tariff reduction. Okay, so you can see that UAE, India, SEPA 2022, it has reduced the tariffs. Your free trade agreements with the EU and your UK under the negotiation, they are also under the negotiations. Now, what are the opportunities ahead? So I have already told you that it is continuously focusing towards the increase in the FDI. So it will attract most of the investors here, most of the investment here. So you can see global buyers are shifting sourcing to India. 40% of the global procurement officers plan to increase their sourcing from India. Bangladesh and Vietnam they have a potential to expand your MMF production and align with the global demand trends. Simplification of export procedures are there. It can significantly reduce the cost and improve the competitiveness. Now we'll see about the world consumption of major textile fibers. Okay, so you can see it has been increasing here. The one in the dark purple is consisting of wool. Light purple consists of man-made fiber, and the lightest one consists of your cotton. So you can see the darker one is increasing over the period of time. Specifically, if I talk about the 2024. Now, cotton market share in the global market for fibers is there. Now it has been decreased. If I talk about the 2024 period, prior to this, if I talk about 1960, it was 68.3%. Now it is 22.3%. Okay. Now you will see here the diversification of India's exports to new markets. Okay. So you can see that we are continuously diversifying ourselves. We are continuously diversifying our India's exports towards new markets as well. So if you see, we are electrodes ka agar main baat karu, so it is 8%. It is 8%. We are continuously towards the drugs formulation and biologicals as well. Cosmetics and toiletries are there. Book publication and printing is there. And you can see the entire chart. There are a lot of items that are included. Okay. Now now you can see the services trade remained resilient among the global challenges. So we saw that, you know, our merchandise, there was an increase in our merchandise, but specifically if you talk about the services, that also had remained resilient, even though when there were a lot of, you know, global challenges going on. So if I talk about the numbers, you can see that it is, you know, lacking somewhere above, you know, 100, but just below your 150. So, you know, this is what has been shown here. Okay. Now the one in purple is services, and the one, you know, in blue is your service import. Similarly, if I talk about your blue line, that shows your net service receipts. Now your, you know, services imports are 150, your services exports are 280 here. Now we'll talk about the ease of doing business initiative, that is for exports. Now here first we have logistic efficiency and infrastructure development. So you can see investment in, you know, logistic hubs and supply chains has been improved, that aims to reduce the export cost and enhance your competitiveness under the national logistic policy. Similarly, we are highly focusing on the, you know, paperless eBRC system. Now it will save your 125 crore annually by streamlining your 2.5 billion eBRCs. Similarly, it will reduce the administrative cost. It will benefit the e-commerce exports, and it will improve the access to export benefits and, you know, your refunds. Now, if I talk about, you know, DGFT, Trade Connect e-platform. So a single window platform is there for exporters. Specifically, we are targeting our MSMEs to access a new market. Okay. Now it will connect various of the consumers here, various of the holders here. So if you see, then it will connect 6 lakh of IAC holders, 180 million, 180 Indian mission officials, and 600 of export promotion council officers. Now it will ensure that, you know, the time, or I would say the information that is, you know, exchange, that is real time trade. Okay, and it will link the businesses with the government agencies and your banks and trade experts as well. Now if I talk about the DGFT Trade Facilitation mobile app, so first we have already discussed that it will ensure your real-time updates on, you know, trade policies and statistics. Next, you can have virtual assistants. Whenever you need help, you can have a virtual assistant that will, you know, remain 24/7. That is the case here. Okay. Now if I talk about the balance of payment, now it is basically a balance sheet that is made which ensures, or, you know, which registers your exports and imports. That is entirely about your balance of payment. Now about its resilience and challenges. So you can see, against the drawback of uncertainties of the external trade in BOP has remained stable. Okay. It has led to resilient services exports, benign good crude oil prices, renewed foreign portfolio inflows, and a revival in your FDI flows here. Okay. Now you can see the current account. Now the, you know, whatever has been given in the current account, you can see there is a, you know, sorry, where were we? You can see it has been, you know, reaching minus 1.2%. That is the case here. Okay. Now which one is reading? If I compare CAD as a percentage of GDP. Okay, as a percentage of GDP. Now you can see here the chart, which is your current account balance as per, you know, the GDP. Now if you, now a lot of, you know, I would say countries have been taken here. Specifically if I talk about India, so you can see it in the, you can see it in the financial year 2024, financial year, your 2024 here, and rest you have a lot of rest of the nations also. Okay, if you specifically talk about India, you can see it in the financial year 2024, that is minus 1.3%. Okay. Now we'll see the capital and financial account. Now you can see here the quarterly trends in the net capital inflow. So if you talk about the, you know, quarters of financial year 2024, so you can see it is, you know, the data is here, that it reached highest in financial year 2023, that was 89.9, 89.5%. Now if you see the current data of 2024, quarter 4, it is 25.6%. Okay. Now what is the performance of FDI flows, that is your foreign direct investment. Now gross one is in purple one, and, you know, your disinvestment as in कि government ने क्या करा, जो government owned companies हैं उनके shares कुछ बेच दिए किसको, हमारे private players को, that is called your disinvestment. Now it is including the amount of money that is, you know, that is coming to the government of India through disinvestment. That is what is included here. So if you talk about the March to April period, so you can see the, you know, the gross that your FDI inflows is 56%, and if I talk about $56 billion. Similarly, if I talk about your disinvestment, that is $40 billion. Now we'll talk about the sector trends in FDI. So you can see the data here. Other services are at 19.1%. Computer software and hardware consist of 14.1%. Next, trading consists of 9.1%. Next, your non-conventional energy consists of 7.0%. Cement and gypsum products consist of 6.1%. Similarly, construction activities 4.4%. Electricity energy 4.3%. Consultancy services 3.2%. Automobile industry 3.2%. And hospital and diagnostic center 3.1%. Okay. Now we'll see the performance of the portfolio flows here. So specifically, if I see the period of 2024, so it is 3.1%. Okay. Now we'll see the exchange rate. Now exchange rate is what? You are exchanging goods and services with one nation to another, है ना? तो उसके लिए क्या करना पड़ेगा? आपको करेंसीज भी एक्सचेंज करनी पड़ेंगी. That is known as your exchange rate. For example, your $1 is equals to your more than your 85 rupees something. That is your exchange rate. Now confirm the exact one, but it is something. It is between 28. It is between your 85 and 86. It is 86 point something or 85 point something. Now the exchange rate is that you are getting $1 and you are paying this much amount of rupee against it. So this is what if I talk about India, this is minus 2.9%. Okay. Now we'll talk about REER and NEER here. So it is what basically. If I talk about REER, so it is a real exchange rate. Okay. If I talk about the NEER, it consists of nominal exchange rate. Nominal exchange rate is not inflation adjusted, whereas if I talk about REER, that is real sense. That gives you a real sense of what is the situation of our economy. मैं कितनी goods and services जो है अपनी economy में खरीद सकता हूँ. It gives you a situation. It gives you an idea कि दूसरे nation में कितना inflation है और मेरे nation में कितना inflation है. REER gives you a real data and NEER gives you a hazy data. Now in green you can see trade weighted NEER here. Okay, so you can see it is lying somewhere near to 92. Similarly, if you talk about trade weighted REER, okay, so it is lying, or the currency basket is somewhere lying above the 102 here. Now we'll talk about the external debt कि हमने बाहर वाली country से कितना उधार ले रखा है. So you can see the data here. If I talk about the purple one, so it is FER to TD. So you can see it is lying here near between your 600 से लेके 800 तक. Now if you talk about the STED to if you talk about STED to TED, so it is lying here. Next, if you talk about ED, which is your yellow line, so it is also lying at the same pace. External debt is just near to just between your 600 से लेके 800 तक. Now we'll see the outlook that what is being said by the economic survey here, that how can we improve it. So merchandise जो exports है, it saw a moderate growth due to slowing of external demand. While if I talk about the exports, while if I talk about the imports, it grew strongly because of the domestic demand here. Net service receipts की अगर बात करूँ, remittances की बात करूँ, so it helped in offsetting the rising trade capital deficit. Similarly, if I talk about the capital inflows, so it remained positive in nature. While higher gross FDI inflows were there in the first 8 months of financial year 2025, though the net FDI was limited and by increase in the repatriation. Similarly, if we talk about the FPI, inflows showed volatility during financial year 2025. Global trade shifting from globalization to protectionism. मतलब, of course, we are globalized. We are towards the globalization, but we are also putting some restrictions so that जो हमारे nation के अंदर whatever we are producing, it should not be the interest should not be I would say कि वहाँ पे जो इंटरेस्ट है वो कहीं ना कहीं जो है वो ख़राब नहीं होना चाहिए. इट इज़ आर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी टू प्रोटेक्ट द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ आर डोमेस्टिक प्रोड्यूसर्स. इट इज़ रिक्वायरिंग इंडिया टू रिड्यूस द ट्रैवल कॉस्ट एंड improve your facilitation. India must enhance your trade competitiveness through the quality investment by industries and efficient governance by expanding your global market share. A focus on the quality and efficiency in both your public as well as private sector will help in sustaining your high economic growth despite your global trade challenges. Now a question for all of you here. Now according to the A, Now cast 20, the positive momentum in global trade witnessed in the first 3 quarters of 2024 is expected to continue into B. As a result, global trade is set to exceed its 2022 record, reaching nearly USD dollar how much in 2024? This record high is likely to be driven by 7% increase in the services trade, while goods trade is projected to grow about by 2% in 2024 but remain below its 2022 peak overall. Global trade is expected to expand by about USD 1 trillion in 2024, with goods and services contributing approximately USD how much each. Now you have to tell me what refers to A. Is it UNCTAD, WTO, IMF, World Bank or OECD? So we have read that it is what? It is A, which is your UNCTAD. Okay. Now we'll see the next question. What does B refers to? Is it quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4 or quarter 5? So if you go through the entire survey, if you read the entire survey, you will get to know it is quarter 1. Now the C refers to $11 trillion, $15 trillion, $33 trillion, $40 trillion or $78 trillion. So the correct answer we have is $11 trillion. What does D refer to? Is it USD dollar 500 billion, 850 billion, 300 billion या फिर 120 billion या फिर 150 billion? So the correct answer we have is 500 billion. ठीक है. Now we are done with the chapter 3. In the coming classes we'll see about the chapter 4, in which we'll again come up with the detailed analysis along with the data and the proper terminologies that are there. We'll first decode it and then we'll see the growth or I would say the decrease in the patterns of those particular terminologies, taking care of the data there. So thank you so much. I hope the things are clear to you. If you will have any of the doubt, you can reach out to the team and then you can reach out to me just to ask the doubt. So thank you so much. I'll meet you in the next chapter. So till then, keep revising and go through the survey as well. Thank you.